What's going on, everybody? I'm Max Ralph.
Seth Engle.
We are the 1-0 podcast. But before we get going, just wanted to let y'all know about our exclusive podcast sponsor, Ocean State Job Lot. We're proud to have Ocean State Job Lot as our sponsor. If you haven't visited them yet over on East Avenue, here's what you're missing. First things first, it's close, just 5 minutes off of campus. Worth the trip with the savings and discounts you can't afford to miss. It's the perfect place to shop before the big home games coming up against Maryland and Michigan State. Stock up on all of your last-minute tailgating needs. They've got snacks, comfortable chairs, disposable pans and plates, and don't forget they also take Lion Cash, good for students. Plus, become a Job Lot Insider, and you'll get exclusive deals sent straight to your email so you can stretch your dollar during the week too. Score that touchdown and save. Visit oceanstatejoblot.com now for more info. Big shouts to OSJL. Appreciate them, but it's Indiana week. Indiana's not a great football team. It's kind of not a super exciting week to talk about things. But after Penn State lost at Ohio State, things have kind of gotten interesting on the quarterback front. Aside from as much as Penn State should have no problems winning this weekend, there's been some interesting talk about Drew Aller versus Sean Clifford. Seth, why don't you just kind of break it down quick for me?
Yeah, so I mean, there have been the conversations all year long of, okay, when is it time for Drew Aller to really take over? You know, when you're a one-loss team or under, still fighting for a college football playoff, you know, it's hard to really turn to that true freshman and give him the sticks.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're at the point in the season where Penn State is a two-loss team. The college football playoff is all but, you know, out of the rear view mirror. It doesn't necessarily seem like the worst option in the world to start Drew against, you know, a couple bottom feeder teams to end the year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really tough because, you know, you have a guy who's been around the program for 6 years. He's pretty much done, you know, all that you could have asked from him, with the exception of making a playoff and, you know, all that and winning a Big Ten championship. But I mean, Sean's been as committed to the program as I think anyone we've seen in a long time. So it's hard to kind of take his job away and give it to someone else. I understand that aspect of it. But you know, there's another side to it, which is like, okay, if Drew Aller actually gets, you know, 4 games of starting experience to end his freshman year, then going into a sophomore year when you already know he's going to be the starter, like, you know, he's more than developed here. So, I mean, that's kind of what's going on here. That's the thought processes. And
yeah,
I mean, we're just not going to know until, you know, kickoff.
Yeah, we're not going to know until it happens. I mean, James Franklin's made it very clear that he's not going to spill anything. I think this week has been interesting though, because you go back 2 weeks ago before the Michigan game, 2 weeks ago, James Franklin was very adamant. Sean Clifford is our starter for now. The plan has not changed, will not change. And then after the Minnesota game, he did his whole long dramatic pause thing. He was like, Sean Clifford won the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week. And stared at everyone, was like tired of getting Drew Aller questions. And then this week, we go in Tuesday, talk to James Franklin in his press conference, and it's a much different tone when he's asked about Drew Aller. It's like, I'm going to do what's best for us to go 1-0. He didn't say Sean's name. He didn't say Drew's name. It was very non-committal. It was very different from his dramatic pause that he did in the past. So I thought that was interesting. The other interesting thing for me was that he also mentioned Sean Clifford went to him and asked to have a meeting. We don't know what it was about. We don't know what was said. James didn't disclose that information. I think it's incredibly interesting that he at least mentioned that they were going to have a meeting together and that it was Sean's idea. I think Sean knows the position that he's in. I mean, he's not stupid. He's been here for long enough. I think he knows as much as everything that we can say about the situation. I think he knows and understands. My take on it all is Penn State needs to do everything it can to win 10 games this year. I think that we've talked about it before, but I think winning 10 games is more important than 10 games versus 9 games is a huge difference, because if you win 10 games, there's an outside shot you get to the Rose Bowl. Like if Michigan and Ohio State both make the playoff, you're going to the Rose Bowl. And it's just interesting to me because I think that you can market and you can sell a New Year's Six bowl game to boosters and recruits more than you can like another Outback Bowl. Um, I think that's interesting. And I think the way that this works best for Penn State is if you start Sean this weekend against Indiana, and then as soon as you feel comfortable, it's Drew time. But then when you come back against Maryland, Maryland's a good football team. And I think Sean will play 90% of that game unless it's close. If they blow them out, Drew will come in. But Maryland's a good football team. I think Sean plays most of that to make sure they win. And then honestly, like I would start Drew against Rutgers because Rutgers is not a good football team. It's a game you should be able to win with Drew starting. Let Sean rest. He's been banged up all year anyway. And then you come back home senior day for Michigan State. You start Sean. You let him play a quarter, 2 quarters. Once it's comfortable, you put Drew in. I think there is a way that Penn State goes the rest of this season playing both of them significantly. And then, of course, bowl game, that's Sean's time to shine. That's Sean's time to, exhibit himself for NFL scouts. That's his last chance, whatever. But I think there's a way that you can go about this, giving both of them significant playing time down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's looking like it probably will be Drew against Indiana. I think, I can't really speak on that too much, but I mean, the way things are looking, I mean, you talk about the meeting. It just seems like after that Ohio State game, that was kind of Sean's like last shot in a way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they can go to a bowl game and all that, and that's all great. But like, how much does a New Year's Six bowl game really mean in today's NCAA? It means a lot on James Franklin's resume to go, but how much does it really mean to Sean Clifford to be able to say like, okay, I'm gonna keep going out here every single week? I'm sure he'd be fine with going out every week, but like when he's been here for 6 years, it's more about the program than it's actually for him.
Yeah.
So that's probably what that meeting was about when they're discussing. And I don't even know if they've had it yet. I mean, Franklin, he didn't say anything. They said he was asked yesterday, was there anything you feel comfortable sharing? And Franklin just says no. So like, we don't even know if it happened yet. We don't know what they talked about. It's about, something with this and whether, what the plan's going to be long term. I don't know. It's and I think the fact that James Franklin went out and asked asked coordinators. He asked both Yursich and Manny Diaz
too. Yeah.
On their insight on the on the quarterback battle, and then other assistant coaches as well. So it's like it's looking more real than it ever has before that Drew is going to suit up and be that starting quarterback on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm fully in the camp that he's going to start, but I do fully believe that he's going to play significantly because, like we've mentioned, the discourse surrounding that this week was just so much different than what we've seen in the past. The other thing for me, though, to go back on what you said about New Year's Six bowls, I really do feel like winning 10 games and making an NY6 game is different for this program, though, because this is a program that, as has long been mentioned, went 11-11 over the past 2 years. Fans are restless. Like there's something about a number and a high priority bowl game that just kind of eases everything, in my opinion, for James Franklin in this program. Like if you prove that you can still do it, that you can get there, like you got to do what you can to do it. You got to make the fan base still have faith in you and something, even though, as you said, like from a team perspective, from an individual player perspective, those games really don't mean much of anything. But I just think that there's something about it that would really serve Penn State well, more than whatever they go to going 9-3. But that's enough on that. Let's talk quickly about Indiana. Like I said, not a very good football team. They're 3-5, somehow beat Illinois, which Illinois is having a great season. That was kind of wild.
I mean, that was week 1.
Yeah, it was early on. But I've always been a fan of Tom Allen's. He's a good coach in a tough situation. What do you see this weekend, Seth?
So it's kind of funny. I mean, you mentioned Tom Allen there, and his teams always seem capable of beating Penn State. Every single time they match up, there's always like, oh, well, there's a chance because they make it competitive. It's almost like whenever Penn State plays Ohio State, that's how it is with Indiana.
Yeah.
This year, however, is a very different story. Completely different story. Because Indiana is just not good.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a similar situation to Penn State, where we don't know who their starting quarterback's going to be.
Yeah.
There are 3 guys, not just 2. There are 3 guys who could potentially, all start or make their way, into the game on Saturday, which is really interesting. It's kind of James Franklin versus Tom Allen in terms of like who's going to release their depth chart at quarterback, just trying to withhold the information from each other. So there's really not a lot we know in terms of, players for Saturday. Like, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be, but what we do know is Indiana's tendency on offense, which is just to throw the ball so much and do so inefficiently. They have one of the lowest offensive efficiencies in the Big Ten, the lowest completion percentage in the Big Ten, but they also throw the ball more than any other team. So that's what they do. They run the ball less than any team in the Big Ten, even though their running back's pretty good. Sean Shivers from Auburn. So that's their offensive philosophy, and it just hasn't worked. It just hasn't worked.
There's just not a lot of talent there. Like you said, it was kind of shocking to me, honestly, going through the stats this week and realizing that Connor Bazelak had thrown the most passes in the Big Ten and also had the 3rd most passing yards.
Yeah, well, he averages over 47 pass attempts per game, which is absurd for a team that now doesn't have their leading receiver too. It's just like, this is just an offense falling apart.
Indiana's never been an air raid offense either. Like, it's just kind of wild to see. But there's just not a lot of talent on that team. Even defensively, there's just not much. Like you said, you never know. Tom Allen's done some crazier things in the past. I mean, he had this team in the top 15 in 2020. So it's just, you never know. There's a reason you play the game. But I think this could be a Minnesota level smackdown by Penn State or worse. I mean, it's a very similar situation. You're coming off of a loss and kind of need to prove yourself to get back on track. I think it's going to be very similar to that. My score prediction is arbitrary, but I went 31-10. I don't think the Indiana offense is going to get much of anything against the Penn State defense this week.
Yeah, for me, I'm trying to remember what I had. I think it was like 38-17. I'm pretty sure that's what I had. That's only because I think the freshmen are going to play a ton.
Yeah.
I don't think – I think Sean Clifford probably will start the game, like you mentioned earlier, and then they'll just ease Drew in after Penn State goes up, like, I don't know, 14-0, maybe 17-0 at that point. They'll put Drew in. I just think they're going to experiment a lot in this game with the young guys.
I agree.
And then that'll kind of tell, what they do for the last remaining games. But that's why I have it run like at least a little bit close at 38-17. But it's just Penn State's going to win this game. I absolutely have 0 doubt in my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think I agree that it'll be a lot of rotations this weekend because they should have the ability to. So it'll be interesting. A lot to watch. I mean, this quarterback situation is. It's developing over time to say the least. So
it will develop in front of our eyes on Saturday, and it won't develop at all from now until then. But
no, all we can do is speculate until then. But
exactly.
Thanks for speculating with us. Thanks for watching. We are the One and O Podcast. Keep tracking with us online at collegian.psu.edu and on Twitter at PSU Footblog and One and O Pod. Peace.